Hi there, Adam from HDTV Test here. Following up from last week's video about Mad Max Fury Road, which was pretty well received, we thought we'd take a look at something a little bit more recent. In this video we're going to be taking a look at Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, which is just released on 4K UHD Blu-ray. In this video we'll be taking a look at some scenes from the start of the movie, so if you've not seen the film, spoiler warning, you might see some things you don't want to. We have taken care though to ensure that nothing too specific is shown. This footage has been captured from the UK UHD release and is being played back on a Panasonic UB9000, captured using an Atomos Ninja 5 in the Apple ProRes 422 format. As for a little due diligence, one of the first things we'll take a look at is what metadata has been chosen to be entered into the movie to assist our displays with their own tone mapping. The disc itself shows 724 nits as the peak luminance within the content itself, with a maximum average light level of 647, and this suggests that we have some very bright full screen shots. The mastering display is set at DCI P3 1000 nits max with a 0.0001 nits as a minimum, and this is indicative of it possibly being graded on one of the reference OLED screens. So in the footage here I've actually tweaked my heat map slightly compared to previous videos where we've deployed it. If you aren't familiar with it, what we're doing is converting the luminance data of the image into some predefined colours so you can more easily see where the brightness is, even on a non-HDR display. So on the scale here we'll show everything that falls into the range of luminance for a reference SDR image of under 100 nits into grayscale. Once we hit 100 nits, pixels become pure green, at 200 nits they become yellow, at 400 nits they're orange, at 800 they're red, and when they hit 1600 they become pink. Anything above 4000 nits will show as pure white. So we've got a couple of other things on screen here too for this video which are a little bit newer. We've got an HDR PQ scope, and this shows the values and all the other values within the image in a slightly different way. Left to right the scope represents the image on screen, splitting the image up into vertical columns, and the scope is kind of representing the multiple luminance values that exist within that vertical column of that image. Over on the left hand side we've got a CIE 31 scope. 3 colour spaces are drawn on. We've got a BT 2020 colour space as the largest triangle that you can see here, and this is the maximum container that can be used for all HDR content. The slightly smaller triangle is DCI P3, and that's the colour space typically used to grade for theatres. And we finally have the smallest colour space, Rec 709, which is used for SDR content, including all Blu-ray, DVD and traditional broadcast images. You'll see the colours that are being displayed on screen filling various areas of these primaries as they're being used. So what we're interested in is which data falls between, say, Rec 709 and DCI P3, or actually what data goes even further beyond the P3 display that the film was actually graded on. Up in the top right we've got the original source clip running in HDR, just so you can see what is happening and what we're looking at totally free of visualizations. Jumping into the footage we can see that, as is fairly normal, the bulk of the image falls within that 100 nit range, with small highlights kicking up a stop brighter, maybe 200 nits or so. However, we can see the kind of blaster projectiles and explosions quite frequently hitting 500 or so nits. These internal shots, you can see that the contrast has been amped up a little bit, and you can see brighter things going on outside of the window, keeping the pace of visual contrast really high. Although we're watching a movie, the immersiveness of the various dials and lights inside the cockpit being brighter than their surroundings really help to trick our brains into thinking these are real life things, and this is particularly evident on the lighting around the top of the Millennium Falcon's cockpit here. Elsewhere in the movie we can see that even less intense scenes look wonderful, and this little injection of reality from a truer to life image goes a long way. I think this scene here of Chewie and Poe playing the holographic space chess, I don't know what it's actually called, looks really great. The film grain and the artistic style of the film really give you nostalgia pangs, and it feels like you're watching a classic movie. The movie was shot on a mixture of film then scanned in as a 4K DCI, and that had to be an artistic choice to capture the feel of those original movies. This does mean that we have a fantastic example of how you can make use of new display technologies and channel the aesthetic of something vintage. Another Mandalorian this is not. As a sci-fi action kids movie, there's plenty of opportunity for visually intensive scenes to make good use of both the additional code values in the darker parts of the image and those values that go up to 724 nits. The max full frame average is likely to have come from one of these lightning heavy type shots, as is that 724 nits max output. And these are dotted throughout the movie. This 647 max frame average is well above and beyond what a typical OLED screen can display. As it's a short flash, it's probably likely we can get a little bit higher full frame white that we can typically measure from an OLED screen. Of course, for full array quantum dot displays, they can do this in their sleep, so they will actually be even more impactful than they would be on an OLED display. Overall, the image is incredibly close, certainly in terms of visible detail between the SDR Blu-ray and the UHD Blu-ray. However, if we do look hard enough in the very most extreme parts of the movie, and this will be deliberate to create the perception of luminance that the format is incapable of actually showing. In these extreme edge cases, they even clip a little bit compared to the HDR version of the movie. I won't show what scene this is from, but here is an example of the waveform from the same frame in SDR and HDR. Note that the SDR is clipping a little bit more. So just as a last example, and before we sign off, here's an example of one of the scenes in a forest. There's quite a few of these in the film, and we can actually see that a really big chunk of the green information sits well outside of what is capable in Rec. 709. There's significantly more colour data present even in this fairly normal looking scene, if you think levitating is normal. And this really highlights the wide colour gamut of the HDR formats. If you are still watching your movies on a regular Blu-ray because you haven't ditched your aging plasma screen, then you're missing out on physical visual information that no amount of light control viewing or calibration can make up for. So I hope you found this video useful. Many thanks for watching. If you did like it, please hit like and subscribe, follow us on Twitter, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.